Are there safety concerns about using a microinverter? Will my solar panels rust? You, our viewers, have asked many great questions and shared comments that deserve an answer, and it's time to answer them. The first question comes from our Do Solar Panels Require Maintenance video. It says, "Hello guys, thanks for the information. Appreciate that very much. My question is corrosion on the frame and lines. I live in a warm, hot island with heavy sea blast around the coastside. Any advice you may have for these types of issues?"
So I think the question there primarily is, will my solar panels corrode or rust over time, especially in a situation like this, where you're right close to the sea, salt water, etc.
Yeah, when he's referring to lines, I think he's talking about the wiring or conduit, or as well as the solar panels.
Yep. So since the solar module frames and racking are both made from anodized aluminum, corrosion is unlikely, but it's not impossible.
Right.
So we have not had issues with corrosion or rust. And, even on our systems in Eastern Shore, Maryland, where we've have systems installed for over 10 years now. However, what I would say is this: if you're on an island with heavy sea blasts like this person mentioned, it would make sense to reach out to your manufacturer and see what they say. This sounds kind of like a case-by-case situation. So I would say, in general, you're fine. Unique situation like this probably makes sense to check with the manufacturer and see what they say.
Yeah, great point. All right, our next question is from our top 4 best home solar batteries of 2024 video. And it is, could you explain how a company with $30 billion in the bank has profitability problems? Or we're speaking of the contractors. Here in Arizona, the contractors are raving about the lower costs of using PW3 and the ease of installation. Please explain.
So this is referring to Tesla.
Yeah.
So the PW3 is the Powerwall 3. And I believe what this person is saying is, look, you guys are saying Tesla has profitability issues. You're concerned about, their financials, but they have tons of money in the bank and customers really like their product. That's a really great question and a really good point. So I kind of have Tesla hangover because Tesla had been unprofitable for over a decade before now they have 4 straight profitable years. So I'm changing my view on Tesla a bit, but it's taken me some time. They had a long stretch of unprofitability where I thought they weren't going to make it. Obviously, Elon Musk has proved me wrong. So I would say they've certainly turned things around. To say this, I think it's fair to say they've had issues with their financials, but today they've turned things around. It sounds like their products are really cool, and so I think it's a brand to watch.
I do too, but I think there's another important point to bring up here, Larry, is that just having 30 million or 30 billion in the bank has nothing to do with profitability. We've seen very recently large public companies with investors who have invested heavily over the years provide capital. These companies have never been profitable and then have gone out of business. And so they may have had tremendous funding and money in the bank at one point, but couldn't figure out the business model to sustain profitability in the long term and then go bankrupt.
Absolutely. It looks like Tesla has kind of solved the riddle.
Yes.
But I will say this, what I would rather see is decade after decade after decade without yearly losses.
Right.
That's what's really attractive to us. That's what we look for in the brands that we work with. Not always able to do that in the solar industry, but that would be our preference.
Our next question is from our top 3 best solar panels of 2024 video. Thanks for the video. Quick question. I got 3 quotes. 2 of them are Q cells, and 1 is REC and peak. Do you have any opinions on REC? That offer is the most competitive compared to the 2 with the Q peak.
So you're right, Warren. Q peak is a Q cells module, and the other one is an REC module. Q cells and REC are both great brands. I would recommend either of those brands to anyone. I believe that REC is a great brand, great module. Now, our experience here at Paradise is that REC is more expensive than Q cells for a similar module. Now, this customer is saying that REC is less expensive than Q cells. So it's possible that they're working with an installer that has some kind of special pricing agreement with REC where they get that price down. So I would say have at it. I mean, REC is a great module. Q cells is a great module. I don't think you're going to go wrong with either of them.
All right, moving on to our next question is from our Do Solar Panels Need to Be Cleaned video. For people who are supposed to know this business, you sure don't know a lot about this. 6 months, sometimes less, those panels are dirty and calcium builds up super fast and productions drop dramatically. So if this happens to your system, Please wash them first before calling your solar provider for assistance. More often than not, this was an issue.
Yeah, so this sounds like a case-by-case situation to me,
Yeah.
Warren. This is definitely an unusual situation. So our recommendation typically is if you have an issue with our system, call your provider. If you have soiling or you want your solar panels washed, call your installer. Don't do it yourself. Now, you can do it yourself if you want, but you could break something. You could fall off a ladder. There's a lot of bad things that could happen, a lot of negative things that could happen. So I would say, first of all, call your installer. Now, I would also say to this customer that I think your situation is environment specific. There are situations where solar panels need to be washed more frequently, and this sounds like one of those situations.
Yeah, I would say that by and large, the majority of solar systems we install don't need cleaning. The rain will take care of it. However, if you are in an area where you're creating a lot of soiling or dust and they do need to be cleaned frequently, as Larry said, reach out to your installer and find out how to get them professionally cleaned.
At least get some recommendations.
Yeah.
At least have that conversation.
All right, the next two questions are from the same person that come from our top 4 best solar inverters of 2024 video. I have a concern on microinverters on putting such a critical, potentially sensitive thing on my roof. In particular, I live in Tucson, and that has much heat hitting the inverters, and that would be a cause for concern. Potentially increased failure rates in that condition, and maintenance is all done on the roof. If you're lucky, you know exactly which panels need attention. I guess with optimizers, less of the brain is on the roof and exposed directly to sunlight. The inverter is in the garage. A panel can function potentially without an optimizer. Bypass diodes on panels should handle a big chunk of the shading impacts if you need to temporarily remove an optimizer, I guess. He also said the other part of the concern that concerns me about the microinverter is the increasing focus on battery and EV charging. With DC coupled, you should be able to charge those directly from the panels.
Yeah, so there's a number of questions in here. The first one is related to microinverter reliability and having the whole inverter up on the roof versus at the ground level.
Yeah.
So while I agree wholeheartedly, in my opinion, I like to see more of the equipment at ground level if possible. I like to see only the optimizer on the roof in the elements and have the inverter in the house rather than having the whole microinverter up on the roof. That being said, I will say this, there are microinverter companies that have been working at this for years, for 15 plus years. I mean, we've experienced that with Enphase. And if you want to see more about how serious Enphase is about quality, we'll put a link to a video that we did at their manufacturing facility. We'll put a link in the comments below where you can see that video and see how serious they are about quality and about testing their product. So I have no reason to think that SolarEdge as an optimizer company is going to be more reliable than Enphase as a microinverter company. I can't speak for other optimizers and microinverters in the market, but from my perspective, I can't say that solar is going to be better than Enphase. That being said, I do like having the inverter at the ground level. Now, the second thing I want to address is the question around if I remove an optimizer off the roof, my system will still run and the bypass diodes will help me with shade and all that. With SolarEdge specifically, again, I can't speak for other optimizer companies, but I'm pretty sure they're all going to be the same. If you take an optimizer out, that panel's not contributing to production.
Right.
It's essentially turned off.
Right.
Because you need your optimizers to communicate and to provide the power to the inverters at the exact voltage that the inverters are calling for. So that, I understand what they're saying about the bypass diodes, but that's not how it works. If you take the optimizer out, the inverter's off. Same with microinverter. You take the microinverter out to replace it, that module is going to be off. And then the other piece that I want to talk about is just the efficiency. So there was mention made of DC. Now you can do EV charging, you can do DC charging of the battery. That's an excellent point and something that I think should be talked about.
Sure.
Something that should be addressed, and that is again, I can only speak for the products that I'm familiar with, which is SolarEdge for optimizers and Enphase for microinverters. With SolarEdge, you can put power into your battery DC without any conversions.
Right.
And then pull it out with one conversion. With Enphase, you have to convert DC to AC,
Yep.
AC back to DC to store it, DC back to AC
Right.
to use it at your house. So there is a point there where a Solar Edge optimizer system will be more efficient than an Enphase microinverter system. As far as reliability, I have full confidence in Enphase's product.
All right, let's jump on to the next question, which comes from our top battery video. You left out a few things or features, controllable expert, like here in California, I don't get the benefit of NET as well as NEM 3.0. So being able to set up a zero export is desirable to me to ensure my batteries are fully charged by the time of use, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. peak cost. Also, it wasn't discussed for your audience, but which will perform in a grid down scenario and which won't. I think that's an important distinction. We use EG4 15 kPV, and EG4 wasn't discussed, but it's a California certified hybrid inverter.
Okay, so here again, we have a couple of questions. And the first question, I think, again, it's a really good question about the controllable export, about having a system that doesn't export to the grid. Now, we did not address that. That's correct.
Right.
And I think the big reason why we didn't address that is because that's not much of an issue here on the East Coast.
No.
We are getting some utilities that will allow you to install solar if you don't export to the grid.
And that's only recent. That's very recent.
That is very recent. That's just within the last year or so.
Right.
Now, in California, it's completely different. They have NEM 3.0, which basically, if I understand correctly, you're buying your power at 30 cents and you're selling it back to utility at 7 cents.
Right.
Or whatever it is. So you might as well, and in some cases, you're not allowed to export at all. So you might as well have a battery where you can store that power, use it at higher cost times, use it for your house, or store it when you're not allowed to export anything at all.
Right.
Very good point. And that's a different application than backup.
Yeah.
But it's an important application and something we're going to see more and more of as we go along. Now, as far as which batteries can work when the grid is down and which can't, basically, as far as I know, every battery, certainly every battery that we offer, and as far as I know, every battery that I've seen in the market can work when the grid is down. That's why we install batteries, the primary reason why we install them here in the East Coast. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at. So Solar Edge, Tesla, Enphase, Franklin, all those main battery companies are going to work when the grid's down. That's the primary purpose. And then as far as the EG4 brand, it's not a brand that we're familiar with. I've seen their website. I don't know much about them. What I would say is this: I would stick with the big four: Solar Edge, Enphase, Tesla, and Franklin. We currently offer Enphase, Solar Edge, and Franklin, and I would stick with the ones that are well known. They might be a little bit more expensive, but then you know what you're getting.
Let's jump into our next question, which is from our best solar panels video. What's your opinion on Silfab?
Good question. Silfab is a great brand.
Yeah.
No concerns with Silfab. The only little catch in the back of my mind is that they're a smaller company that's not tier one. But we've worked with smaller companies that aren't tier one before with no issues. So I don't have a problem with that. They are based in North America, which is cool. And here's the cool thing: they're ramping up U.S. manufacturing.
Right.
So we've purchased a little bit from them in the past. We're looking at doing more with them in the future, simply because they're looking at U.S. manufacturing. And another cool thing is they're looking at U.S. cell manufacturing. So in my opinion, I think they're a great brand. I would recommend their products.
Excellent. So that concludes our questions and answers for this video. So thank you, Larry, for helping to answer all of those questions. If you please continue to engage with us, we'll either respond with a video just like this, or we'll respond directly to your comments in the comment section below. Whether you're investing in solar for your home or business, our videos are designed to guide you every step of the way. If this video was helpful, hit the like and subscribe to keep up with the latest in solar energy. Then dive into our residential and commercial solar playlists to continue learning.